Welcome to the Culture Blender, where we meet people from all over the world and who have lived in other countries for more than a year or about a year. Today, we have with us a special guest, Kripa Jean. She has been living in Ontario, Canada for about 5 years now, and she's a marketing manager in the creator industry. Quite interesting as work, I personally feel. And she hails from Kerala, India, and grew up in Kuwait. So, hi, Kripa. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely, yes, and we are excited to hear about your experiences too. So, to start off with, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and where you live right now?
Yes. So honestly, this question is like really complicated for me, I feel like, because I originally am from Kerala, and then I grew up in Kuwait for as long as I
Mhm.
can remember. And then I moved to Canada for my post-graduation and then worked there for about 5 years. And now I'm in Mexico City for about 2 months before heading back to India. So yeah, it's like all over the
Oh,
place. I know.
yeah.
Yeah, that's about where I come from. I was in Toronto for what, 5 years, and then right now I'm in Mexico City. So yeah,
Oh, I
been
see. So you're shifting now to Mexico City, is it?
yeah, just for a few, well, 2 months, and then yeah, I'll be en route to India after that. So
Wow, that's amazing. So you've been so many places. I don't know what was it like growing up in Kuwait as an Indian?
I would say it's a mix of a lot of things because obviously like we're considered expats, right? So expats is
Mhm.
basically people who travel for work and then live there for about like 25, 30 years and then go back to their own country. We don't get
Mhm.
citizenship or PR or something like that, right? So
Yeah,
my
yeah.
parents worked there, and then it's the reason why I was there in the first place.
Of
Growing
course.
up, it was good blend of culture, I would say, because I
Mhm.
grew up like in my school. I grew up with a lot of other like people from different countries, like the Philippines, Malaysians, Indonesians. We were a lot of like South Asian, Southeast Asia amalgamation. So our school
Oh,
was
wow.
full of yeah, all of us, and then it was such a nice eye opener for me to like experience different food, if that makes sense, because my neighbor was also
Oh,
uh, they were half Indian, half Filipino. So we used to get like amazing food for like special occasions, like on birthdays and stuff. And
yeah.
the pan is like one of my favorite Filipino foods. So I was like, I always look forward to it. Yeah.
Wow.
So overall, I believe it was a good experience growing up there, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, great. Wow, thanks. Thanks for telling us. I didn't know that there was such a large Filipino community in Kuwait. That's very interesting.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of like Indonesian, like I said, like Southeast Asia and
Mhm.
South Asia, like the Indian subcontinent is where you would see mostly people from. And then there's a lot of Egyptians too, who I was
Oh,
able to like, yeah, meet and excuse me, meet and like know more about their culture. Even
mm,
for my mom, she works as a nurse. So she's got a lot of like um a good like friends from like different places, and yeah, it's always fun. And then also a lot of people from Sri Lanka. So got
mhm.
I met a lot of people from Sri Lanka, so it's always good to, yeah, I love it, so
Yeah,
it was
it is. I understand. So after growing up in such a versatile place, I suppose Canada being such a versatile place was not that much of a shocker for you, right? But there must have been other things that sort of struck you when you moved to Canada, right, for the first time. So what was it? What was your first impression about Canada as a place?
I would say I looked forward to moving to Canada for a long time. So I was like
Mhm.
under like I had a lot of expectations about, whoa, I'm gonna be in like a massive country, with, like a lot of people, and the infrastructure is gonna be great and stuff, right? So I actually lived in Sarnia, which is like 3 hours away from Toronto. It's like a very
Mhm.
small place closer to
Mhm.
Michigan. So it borders like Michigan, US. And then that place, however, did not meet my expectation, to be really honest, because I went in thinking I was going to be in like Toronto kind of city, and then
Uh,
I ended up being on a countryside. So I was like, what is going on, you know? But
yeah.
overall, I would say Sarnia was a great place for me because it was so much laid back, and I kind of like realized that maybe I don't want to live in a city like in downtown Toronto because it's like too much
Mhm.
stimulation for my brain. But Sarnia kind of like gave me like a good lens to look at Canada and like its countrysides, if that makes sense. Because
Okay.
when you walk on the streets, like when you're going on a walk or something, let's say you're headed out anywhere, people would just
Mhm.
greet you, ask you how your day was. And that's like
Oh,
one thing we don't find. And like I've never felt that before, you know, before going to Canada, you know?
yeah, really nice. That's such a nice, polite culture to be in, to just be walking out and meet people like that.
Exactly. Like anybody, any random people, like you're walking, maybe you're on like a footpath and there's someone walking, they would just say, "Good morning, how's it going?" And I'm like, oh, isn't that like they're not expecting anything back, but it's just like a culture to like address someone
Oh,
you're seeing while you're walking or going somewhere. It was like a big shocker for me because I haven't experienced that in Kuwait or like anywhere else. So
yeah,
it was
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. That brings me to my next question here. How do people live there, and what's different about student life or workplace culture from Kuwait? And if you could tell us a little bit about Kuwait as well, to have a comparison there.
Yeah, sure. So I did like my primary education till like high school in Kuwait, and then I did like my postgraduate in Canada, right? So in
Mm.
Kuwait, it was more like very school like, and we were wearing uniforms, and you know, it's very strict, and
Mm.
it's very curriculum tied, and then there's not a lot of like, I wouldn't say a lot of room for like to be whatever you want, because when you look at high schools from the US or Canada, like when I went to Canada and I saw high schoolers in public school, everyone's got phones, everyone's wearing whatever they want, kind of stuff. So it's definitely a lot like very different compared to Kuwait because it's very strict. Like you have uniforms, you have to follow certain things.
Mm.
But my postgraduate though, the college, the one thing that I really found was really cool was the access to like professors, if that makes sense. Because you can like go to the faculty, and then if there's a professor that you really vibe with, you could ask like for coffee chats, and you can sit with them, talk to them, and you know, ask them for their
Oh,
guidance and their experience and things like that. And people are really open to it. I'm sure it's very similar to
okay.
like North American college scenario, and even like the
Mm.
European culture. Like
Mm.
professors are like more open to getting connected with their students, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like networking is like on a higher level basis kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't something that I found, like even when I did my bachelor's in India, professors
Yeah.
were so professors
Yeah,
are like
absolutely. Yeah. The hierarchies in both these types of countries are very different. So you see, for example, the hierarchical structure in the U.S. being very, of today's cultural theory standards, very feminine in nature. So
yeah,
that's something very interesting. And
yeah.
going there and starting to work there, especially. So how did you sort of adapt to this new kind of culture, this sort of networking? And not just that, just the unwritten rules around on the street, because I'm sure, and I don't know how Kuwait is with regards to, for example, road rules, to give an example, but how did you adapt to that?
Right. So I think necessarily I was able to adapt more easily is because I haven't really worked anywhere else before this. So my
Mhm.
expectation of like work culture was like purely based on of what my like the seniors that studied and then they're off to work, they would say like, oh, this is how you would, you know, navigate to getting a job. This is how you would talk to someone to get a job, kind of stuff. Although I
Yeah.
did for about like 3 months in India, in Kerala, as an ESL trainer. So that was kind of like a different experience. Like you mentioned, the hierarchy is like a lot different. In Canada, I feel like, again, it goes back to the hierarchy. I feel like a lot of people are more open to being asked questions and want to be able to help
Mhm.
you. Like they're always like, if you come to me with a question, I will try my best to help you. Like most people are like that. And
Okay.
I would say, like, I'm not too sure about how things go, like work culture goes back in India, because I've heard terrible stories from my friends. But in Canada, a lot weighs on your circle, if that makes sense. If you're able to
Oh,
meet
yeah.
people, like networking would take you places that your degree won't take you or your experience won't take you, if that makes sense. So that's
Mm-hmm.
like one.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Yes.
Yeah, I tell everyone, like there's so many newcomers, like new students who come to Canada, and then they always, because I always do like a LinkedIn network thing, and then people would
Mhm.
just reach out and be like, "Hey, how do you navigate this?" Like fresh grads, right out of school,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
would just tell them like, "Listen, if you get a chance to network, do it the best you can, because your name will be put out where your resume won't go, if that makes
Yeah.
sense."
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I would say that, in India as well, we do have a networking culture. It's just a little different. It's slightly more subtle, I would say, than in the US or in Europe. So in US or in Europe, for example, you see a LinkedIn profile, you can just like sort of tap in on that and, get in
Yeah.
touch and connect and all of it. And in
Yeah.
India, it works more, I suppose, uh, with these sort of informal connects that you form with people. Of course, with networking as well, that's the case, I'm sure. But I think it's slightly more subtle in India, but it still exists, very much exists, at least from what I understand of
Okay.
Indian workplace culture.
Okay. Yeah, no, but like I feel like the importance of like your circle is like so evident in like Canada. I can only speak
Yeah, yeah.
here, but then like in Toronto, like people just like go out for coffee chats and wanting to like meet people. It's also because
Mm.
they're very receptive. Like no one's like withholding knowledge, if that makes sense. Like they want to
Oh,
give knowledge. At least the people that I've met like are very like
mm.
open to like helping you and giving you like the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience they have in the industry. So that's like really like I'm always like, wow, they're like people are open to it, like very receptive, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
what about adapting to other things? Like, how did you adapt to the road rules over there, or the unwritten sort of rules on public transport, or what about the cuisine? Did you try different food, and any food recommendations that you would like to give here?
Yeah, for sure. I think one also another culture shocker that I forgot to mention this on in the previous question was that we always thank our bus drivers when we exit
Mhm.
off. I'm not too sure how I've been to Ireland, so people do that there too. So it's like
Mhm.
a very Western culture, I think. But then going
Yeah.
into Canada, my friends from school, they were like, "Hey, when you get into a bus, you say good morning or whatever the day is, whatever time in the day is, and then when you exit the bus, you say thank you to the driver." And I'm like, "Isn't that like very nice? Because like we don't do that anywhere else in the world. Like at least I've been like you're thanking that person to like for driving you, if that makes sense."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one thing. And also like food, to be honest, like food is like very similar to the English food, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, because obviously the English culture on Canada, right? So the
Mm.
breakfast would be like hash browns, toast, and the English breakfast kind of stuff.
Oh,
And very Canadian specific would be poutine. I'm sure
mhm.
you've heard of it. It's a
Yeah.
very it's like potato, it's like fries, and then you have gravy on top with cheese curds, and
Mm.
you can also add like meat to it, whatever meat you like. And
Yeah.
I was So I traveled to Montreal twice. So I there is this one specific shop, I forgot the name, but I could tell that later. But there's this one specific spot that serves like huge poutine bowls with like guacamole,
Oh,
and there's like avocado. There's so it's like so luscious. It could like last for like, I don't know, maybe 2 days of food, but it's great.
my God. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like massive. Like portion sizes too. When you go back to it, portion sizes in the North America is like
Mm.
twice the portion sizes anywhere else, I think. Because in
Oh, wow.
um, yeah, like we have really good portion sizes. It
Yeah.
people are really shocked about it when they hear, especially Europeans, because when I went to
Mm.
the UK and when I was in London, we went out to eat and I was like, but we paid a lot of money because it's in British pounds, right?
Mm.
And then it was so weird because I saw like very small portion and I was like, I was expecting this for the money I paid. But okay, so it was
Right,
a
yeah,
we're served like large portions in Canada. I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, that makes sense. And oh, just curious, have you tried any Kuwaiti food by any
yeah,
chance? Anything specific from there?
yeah, we have something called a grilled platter, which my family always buys
Mhm.
every weekend. It's basically like kebabs, like there's lamb, there is mutton, there is beef, there's chicken, and it's all like in one platter, and then it's all grilled, obviously like barbecue.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have like
Mhm.
potatoes, you have like some onions. It's a beautiful plate with amazing food. There's also the garlic paste that we eat with that, and there's kubus, which is the
Ah,
it's
yeah.
like naan, but not really. So kubus is
Mhm.
the bread we eat with those. But yeah, I think that food really stands out. And there is kunafa, which is not really Kuwaiti. I think it's more.
Mhm.
Is it more Lebanese? I'm not too sure.
I believe it's from Central Asia rather than from the Middle East, right? Originally, I believe it's from
I
the Turkmen, Kazakh region.
I think so. I thought I could be wrong, but then I thought it was more Lebanese than it was more Kuwaiti because I know there's versions of kunafa every like around the Arabian countries. Like
Ah,
there's a kunafa in Egypt too. So like kunafa was like something that we always look forward to. It's like one
okay.
Arab sweet that everyone should try, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the recommendation. And from food, we go to festivals, of course. And which festivals in Canada or in Kuwait, for that matter, or traditions made you feel closer to the culture?
To be honest, I think in Canada it would be like Thanksgiving. It's a very
Mhm.
American thing, but like Thanksgiving holiday, my first Thanksgiving holiday, I just didn't know what people did, right?
Yeah.
They just like bake a lot of veggies and they have like turkey and or chicken, whatever is your preference, and then you just like sit with your family and then you just eat and then you just give thanks for all the good things in your life. I feel like it's such a very nice tradition to have, regardless of what culture you are. I feel like all of us just should just have like a Thanksgiving day, you know?
Right.
Like it's very humble. It's very humble. Like you sit with the people you love and like very close, intimate people in your life, and then you just give thanks and you just celebrate food and drinks with them, right? So I think
Right.
Thanksgiving is something that stuck with me, and I even told my mom after my first Thanksgiving, I'm like, we should make this a tradition, our family, because this is nice, you know. So yeah,
Wow,
definitely.
amazing.
I
It's
know.
amazing how you get impressed with these small things in cultures in different cultures like Christmas in Europe, for example, is a usually a very is such a thing that impresses on people. It's sort of imprints on our memory as such a beautiful concept in that culture, right?
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely. Also
and
one.
moving on, you mentioned before that you like traveling. So please, the floor is yours. How do you get around in Canada? And do you have any travel recommendations? Also in Kuwait, for that matter.
Yeah. In Canada, I think if you live in the GTA is basically Greater Toronto area, or
Mhm.
regardless of like any, like if you're in like Vancouver, if you're proper in the city, I think public transit is the best way to go about it. You don't need to like get Uber or like a taxi. You can just like get around with like subways, with like streetcars. So streetcars is the
Mhm.
equivalent trams. So in Europe, they say trams, we say streetcars in Canada.
Okay.
so so streetcars, and then there's a lot of buses that connects you to like the most farthest region in the city. But if
Mhm.
you are planning to like go to like, let's say you want to go from Toronto to Montreal,
Mhm.
although there are trains, they're not the most efficient.
Right.
they're they take some time, and also kind of like when you compare the price points, I feel like you'd rather drive than take a train, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
gas is also kind of like inexpensive, but then the public trains are a little more expensive. So would you rather drive or would you rather take a train? Kind of, they're
Good
about the
question.
same. So yeah, I think when you're in the city, public transit is the best. It connects
Mm.
you everywhere within the city. But if you're traveling further than that, I feel like maybe get a car or yeah, yeah, I would
Right.
say.
Yeah.
In
And
Kuwait,
where have you traveled? Any travel recommendations?
oh, in within Canada.
Within Canada or in Kuwait, for that matter?
Within Canada, I've been to a couple of places actually. I've been to there's a London, Ontario, where there's like I don't know, there's so many beautiful stuff to see. It's very closer to Sarnia, so that was like the biggest city after Sarnia to like go and like shop around. So and
Okay.
then there's also a place called Paris in Ontario where you can do
Okay.
kayak stuff like that. So there's like a lot of there's like a river where you can go for like 6 hour kayaking or 3 hour kayaking, whatever, with your friends.
Wow.
And then I went to Gatineau, which is like a border between Ottawa and Quebec. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
Ontario Quebec border. So I think it's
Okay.
called Gatineau and then Gatineau, I think. So there's a bungee jump there. It's North America's deepest bungee jump. So I've done that. So if you're into
Wow.
like
Amazing.
adrenaline chaser, I think I would definitely recommend going there. And then obviously like Montreal. Montreal is like a spot you can miss if you live in Toronto because it's like so accessible. It's only like about like 5-ish hours by car.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and yeah, Montreal is it's very similar to Paris, but not really. I would say it's the low tier version of Paris. But but Quebec City is very beautiful.
Mm.
I think that city impressed me more than any other places that I've been in Ontario. I went to Quebec City and I immediately felt like I was in Europe, and I was like, whoa, this is
Oh,
good.
wow.
Yeah, and it's like there's so many mountains, and when you drive into the city, like the landscape is just so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Wow.
If you celebrate
Yeah,
Christmas, I
definitely,
would
definitely a winner for people who don't like big cities too much.
definitely, and I highly recommend celebrating Christmas in Quebec City at least once in your life
Mm.
because it is an experience. The city just goes wild, and then there's like all these cobblestone streets, very similar to Europe, and
Yeah.
then there's like
Uh-huh.
natural streets where you just walk, and then there's like lights all around, and then there is the chateau that I
Mhm.
was about the chateau, like the big hotel. It's like a significant landmark in Quebec
Mhm.
City. And then they just like throw parties and like it's beautiful. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
wow. Amazing.
Celebrate
Wow.
Christmas and
Thanks.
for sure. For sure.
Thanks a
And
lot
yeah,
for those recommendations.
course, of course. In Kuwait, I honestly like, but I in Kuwait is a very small country. So you could go from one end to the other end in just an hour, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
wow.
So
Yeah.
it's that tiny. So most people drive because it's very accessible, and also being a country that produces oil, petrol is
Mm.
very. So people
Yeah.
rather drive than take public transit, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. And so, coming around to where you grew up and where you're from, what reminds you most of your homeland in both of these places, and what do you love the most there?
Right. I think in Kuwait, there were a lot of things that reminded me of my home place, to be honest, because there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us in there. And then we always like, anywhere you go, you find someone from my place, you know? And then there's
Okay. Oh,
like
wow.
people talking like in our mother tongue. So it's always like, you know, there's familiar faces. That's what I would word it. And then it just like reminds you of like, oh, even though we're like this far away from home, this is kind of our second home because we kind of
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Like there's a tiny bit of home there with you.
Exactly. And then there's a lot of like community gatherings that people do. I don't know if you know about Onam, but Onam is like
Mhm.
a very celebrated harvest
Yeah.
festival in my state. So people celebrate that
Okay.
loudly in Kuwait too. So people
Okay.
organize
Wow.
programs around it, and then yeah, it's just nice, you know. So that's
Mhm.
how I get reminded of my home in Kuwait. In Canada, to be honest, when I first came, there was no signs of home, especially in Sarnia, because there were only a few of us. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
yeah, so, but then after 2 years, there were a lot of people, there were a lot of students that came. And then there were a lot of people who got their PR and started businesses and they started selling stuff from home, right? So they have like convenience store, but it's like a proper Kerala convenience store because you get everything
Oh,
that you get
wow.
from Kerala here, but obviously pricier. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but then so
But it's
whenever I went
there.
for
The
shopping,
taste is there.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But whenever I went for shopping and things like that with my friends to these shops, I would be like, this just feels like you're back at home, eh? Because they play music, the regional music here, and then you're like, oh, this is just like home. But yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for talking about music because my next question is: is there any music, any film, any story, any art, any kind of work that you really love in the creative field that made you feel the culture that you are in, that you're living in right now, which is around you, and not just learn about?
I think for sure. When I went to Canada, so it's just a PSA. But then growing up, I've listened to a lot of different languages music. You know, like whenever I show my playlist to my friends, and they look at it and they're like, "Isn't that weird that you listen to music in languages that you don't even understand?" I'm like, I just enjoy the music. You know, I just love the music. That's all. Like, I don't need to know what they're saying, but the music is
Yeah.
beautiful for me to enjoy it.
Mm.
So coming to Canada, I feel like I listen to a lot of French songs, but not necessarily Canadian French songs, but
Mhm.
all the Algerian French songs. I told you before, Soul King is one of my favorite artists, and he
Yeah.
came to Montreal for performing, but then I couldn't be there because of timing and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, so Soul King is one of like a very good artist that I follow. And then
Mhm.
it's just his music about like, because he merges a little bit of Arab and like the Algerian influence into his French songs. Even though he sings French, he mixes up Turkish sometimes, he mixes Arabic sometimes. So it kind of like also ties me back to Kuwait in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear Arab tunes, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm back in my childhood place, you know? So
Of course, yes.
yeah,
Naturally, you must have grown up listening to this music in restaurants and other public places, and even
even in
sometimes around you,
schools.
just during festivals.
Yeah, even in schools, like whenever we had like sports day and all, we just used to blast Arabic songs. So I'm
Yeah.
like familiar to like that kind of music and everything. So every
Mhm.
time I hear that somewhere, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm back in Kuwait kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then so many other singers too. Like I don't know if you know Daju, he's also a French singer. I've listened to a lot of his
Mhm.
music, and then yeah, but it's usually like French music that got me into like learning more about like all this culture,
Oh,
different cultures and things.
wow.
It's
That's so
different.
interesting. That's really interesting. And
Um,
so, speaking about cultural exchange, what does cultural exchange mean to you? Is it sharing, listening with people around, with communities, or is it something more?
For that's a great question, to be honest. I feel like I'm a big lover of culture exchange. And I
Mhm.
try to be like an ambassador for that whenever I can, kind of stuff. Um,
Mhm.
in my previous work where I have like a best friend from there. Her name is Nicole. She's half Italian, half Cuban.
Mhm.
And there was this one time where I took her and one of my other friend who is a North Indian. I took both of them Newport. So I took both of them to Onam in Canada. And then
Mhm.
I was like, guys, because she's also very open to like sharing culture and everything, because she's also really passionate about like having mixed culture. So I was like, you know what, guys, let's just go for an Onam together because I want you to experience it. And then I took them to their first Onam. We had like the whole banana leaf, and then we had like curries and things, and they loved it so much. Like the next Onam comes, they're like, are we going for Onam this year? Are we going for Onam this year? So it's very nice to like it's so nice to like listen that from them, like to hear that from them,
Yeah,
you know, 'cause they loved it so much.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that was like one of the examples that I can remember of. But even her, like she invited us for a dinner once, and then she made like a Cuban chicken and rice.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it's like a recipe from her father. And then it was like it was so nice. I was like, oh my God, this tastes really nice because I've never had Cuban
Yeah.
food. Um, but yeah, so I would say culture exchange is very necessary, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely, yeah.
because as much as
We here at Culture Blend are in complete agreement with that. We also think that it's really necessary to share cultures, to listen to one another, and to sort of have this exchange happening wherever it can. And within India, we have so many occasions for it because we are a subcontinent, right? We have so many different cultures within our regions as well.
yeah. So it was like always, I always tell people like as much as you can share your culture with somebody else, like it's one of like the greatest kind of I wouldn't say gift, but like us as humans, we're here to
Mhm.
like share and experience each other kind of stuff, you know, like regardless of how
Yeah.
different we are, we're just at the end of the day, we're all human beings trying to like live our best lives and also have others enjoy and experience our part of it too, you know? So I
Yeah.
think it's I think it's necessary and share as much as you can. I know some people are kind of like, oh, you know, I've heard mixed reviews about things about like, like, you know, where it ends up being culture appropriation than culture appreciation kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I feel like as long as your intentions are good and you just want to experience another culture, it's
Mhm.
fine. You're
Yeah.
welcome to
Yeah.
experience whatever you want, you
I
know?
think
So,
that's so important, especially in today's world. To have this kind of a mindset, this welcoming perspective from all sides, from everybody, and
yeah.
also this openness to knowledge, right? To learning about different cultures, and not just have this one-sided perspective,
Definitely.
wherever you come from.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks so much for sharing all of your experiences. This was very eye-opening at some points and really, really interesting. Good luck to you in Mexico City for the 2 months that you're there. I hope everything goes well. And
Thank
it would be so nice if you could share a few photos with us from your travels and from the places that you've been.
you. For sure, for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, like I'm like looking forward to this. I was looking forward to this, and it's always
Mhm.
nice to talk about the world and just like experiences, you know. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Alrighty.